Hey, so I could not sleep. So I figured I was going to record a stream. And I think my voice testing. Hello, hello. I think my voice is low. Let me see if I can fix that. Otherwise, you're going to have to turn up the audio. Mm, hmm. Testing. Hello. Testing. I don't know why. I just got this microphone and I don't know how to set it up. The voice is just too low. Maybe if I speak closer to the microphone. No, it doesn't seem to help. You know what? I'm going to listen to this stream myself and see if I can hear myself, see how the audio is. Because I don't. Because I don't. No, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, my audio is fine. Audio sounds fine. Perfect. So I wanted to do this. Uh, First of all, for a couple reasons. First of all, I wanted to see how to live stream, and I'm doing that. And secondly, I can't sleep right now. And thirdly, I have something to talk about, specifically mysticism, what mysticism is, why I find it dangerous. Now, I don't, I don't need to do this stream. I don't need to educate the public. It's not my job, right? Um, Spiritually, if you have knowledge of something, should you warn people about a potential pitfall? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like perhaps it might not be a good deed. It might not be you might not be somebody doing good and warning about evil. I think God does command you to warn of evil, let people know, uh, educate people about something that could be evil. It could mislead them. I think that that's something that's important. You know, I think that that's something that if you did not do, I think God may have less mercy on you, you know, when it's time to be judged. Um, so I think I would rather warn people the same way I was warned by teachers and mentors on YouTube, of many things. I was educated by teachers and mentors on YouTube. Um, and it's just people like me and you who educated themselves in a certain area, and they're just putting out knowledge in that specific area. So for me, one of the main issues that I have is that I feel like there's not many people sounding the alarm about mysticism. um, I don't really hear many people at all come out and say, hey, mysticism is something we got to be worried about. Okay. And it's a very complicated topic. Okay. Mysticism itself cannot really easily be defined. Okay. But I have a definition myself. Okay. So this stream is going to be my knowledge as a human being. Okay. I'm not going to have sources. I don't have academic books to cite. If I remember, I'm going to try to stick to biblical stories that all Abrahamic faiths accept, with the facts that all Abrahamic faiths accept. Okay. I'm going to stick to that. I'm not going to um, make it complicated. I'm going to make it very simple so that anyone can understand. And then from there, the viewer can decide, um, for yourself, what path you want to go. You want to go this path or that path? That's up to you. Okay, but I just want to warn people about an alarming trend that I see right now. It was an alarming trend in the 70s, I think, and it's been an alarming trend over and over again in the past. You could go back probably since the beginning of humans. Okay, there's been this trend. Okay, and the trend is towards mysticism. Now, how do I define mysticism? Mysticism is not easily defined. Okay, so I'm going to give you my definition. Okay, my definition of mysticism is the worldview of having direct experiences and direct goals to connect in some way with God. Okay. Okay. Now, um, and a lot of people would define it that way. Okay. A lot of theologians would define it as some variation of the words I just said. Okay. But can they explain it? So I'm going to try to explain it. All right. Um, when you go ahead and give a when you go ahead and save a child, let's say there's a child that is going to fall. You step in. Let's say he's going to fall from the fifth story of a building. You see it. You risk your own life. You sprint and you go and you save his life. Okay, and then all of a sudden, the next day, your father is cured of his cancer. Okay, now we've all had experiences where we've done something good for somebody, and then something good happened in our own lives. Okay, we all can think of examples like that. Okay, we all can think of examples where we've done something bad to somebody, we were oppressive to somebody, and then right away it backfires and we get hurt somehow. Maybe we trip and fall. Maybe we get a bad result on a test, or our work life just goes downhill. Okay, so on some level, some shape, some form, we have the feeling that if you do bad, bad's gonna come back to you. That the Hindus would describe this as karma. You know, and we can all kind of like as an Abrahamic faith, you can kind of like agree with karma a little bit. Okay. Um. Now a mystic, which mystics exist in every religion. Um. There's a mystic subset of that religion. Okay. So there's Muslim mystics, there's Christian mystics, there's Jewish mystics, there's Hindu mystics, there's Taoists, there's Buddhists, and there's a lot of mystical subsets of every religion. Even you go back to the ancient Egyptians, you can go all throughout history, and all humans have this type of mystic experience. And some humans get together, and what they do is they take these anti anecdotal mystical experiences, and they assume there's something more there, and then they make theories, and they make and they start to believe these theories as facts. Okay, so for example, a mystic would say karma is a law of nature, right? Somebody like me would say, no, you can't say that, because it's true. A lot of times I do good things will happen to me. But it's also true, a lot of times I do good things and bad things happen to me. Okay. A lot of times I do bad things and good things happen to me. Okay. You're just using confirmation bias to just remember the times where a good thing happened to you immediately after. Okay. They would say, no, that's not true. There's something bad that happened to you. You just don't know what it is. Or there's something good that happened to you. Karma happened. You just don't understand it. This is what they would say. Okay, or it was a test and you're supposed to overcome it. Okay, now as you can see, it becomes very difficult to prove mysticism wrong. Okay. Because if you tell them that, hey, that's not a that's not a rule, you can't actually raise your spiritual awareness to a level where you're actually going to consistently see material benefits in this life, they would say, no, I can. And that's how the world works. And it's true. Okay. An example of mysticism, like a mystic religion or ideology. If you guys remember the book, The Secret, okay, it basically said that if you do good, good things are going to happen to you. Okay. Or I didn't phrase that correctly. If you, whatever you focus on, you're going to attract. Okay, so if you focus on blue cars, you're going to start seeing blue cars. Same way, if you start focusing on the job you want, you're going to get the job you want. If you start focusing on $1 million, you're going to get $1 million attracted to your life because you're constantly focusing on it. You're repeating mantras, for 1 hour a day. And a lot of the Hindus do this. A lot of the Taoists do this. A lot of these religions, a lot of the Abrahamic mystics do this. So like even Sufis who are Muslim mystics, they have their own meditations. They call them whirling dervishes, where they go and they like spin their hair around and they dance to music and they basically vibe out with each other for like, I don't know, 30 minutes or an hour or something, and it's supposed to like help them connect with God. Okay, that's the idea of it, is to help them connect with God. um and the Christian mystics have this as well. um I don't know if they sing songs, maybe some of them whip themselves, maybe some, you know um there's monasteries where they go and they are celibate, and they have different rituals that they try to connect with God with in order to raise their purity up to a high level, for whatever reason. Okay, a lot of people, they want to go on a mystic path in order to get unlocked benefits in this life and the hereafter. Some people think that they're connected, that you're actually not going to, heaven is only achievable when you raise your spirituality to a high level. That's when maybe you'll die and go to heaven, or your experience here will end. Okay. Some people believe that, yeah, you can get reincarnated as a higher, like an angel in heaven, or you can get reincarnated as an insect or a rat or something. And so they believe that, um, this life is a chance for you to purify your soul. You don't, but you have direct control over how to purify your soul. And the way you purify your soul is by trying to connect to the universal God. And the way you connect to the universal God is by doing, um, you know, trying to be good, trying to abstain from material life and material possessions. For example, some of them will say that hey, I don't own anything, I don't have nice clothes, I don't have an ego, and they'll start trying to wrap it around your ego, and trying to have no ego, and trying to be very humble and own nothing, and abstain from women, and abstain from money, and abstain from trying to get material possessions, and then pray and meditate all day and do mantras all day, and then somehow, some shape, your soul's going to become more connected to the universal God that's all around you, and then you're going to start having a more higher level experience of this reality, this world, this reality we're all in. You're going to enter a higher level experience to where you can then achieve, um, for example, you'll be maybe forgiven for all your past sins. You can all of a sudden achieve, um, wisdom. You could achieve maybe material benefit, or you'll just be happier, or healthier, or whatever. Okay. And that you'll be taken to heaven as like a high spiritual being. Okay. Essentially, this is what mystics believe. Okay. From all these religions, that's essentially, in a nutshell, what they believe. They believe God's all around you, He's everywhere. and that you can connect with them. So, an example of a mystic ideology would be Star Wars, with the Force. Okay. The Force is everywhere. You can connect with the Force if you get training from a young child. You disconnect him from all attachments, his family. He lives in a monastery. He starts to connect to the Force that's all around us. And then he can start lifting bottles, bringing them to him. And the stronger his level gets, he can start lifting heavier things with his mind. Okay, and he can dodge bullets, and he can see things and with it really fast. He has fast, he's connected to everything, which is all around us is God, essentially. Okay. Now, I've told you where I thought it comes from. It comes from the fact that there's a kernel of truth there, that we all experience what we believe to be mystical experiences at one time or another in our life. Okay. Now, is that our mind being having confirmation bias? Maybe. But we all feel it to be true. We all feel that, hey, I prayed for something and I got that thing, right? And then we start thinking that, hey, um, you know, and we start thinking, if I do good, I'm going to get good. And we experience it in our life. When we do good, we get good, and when we're not good, when we're bad, we get negative energy towards us too. So we all kind of like experience that to an extent. So it seems true. Um, Now, the reason why I would hesitate for a couple reasons. Okay. Number one is that, and for the record, again, I find mysticism to be a devil religion from Satan. Okay, that's my personal belief. Okay, I believe it's from Satan. I believe a lot of things are from Satan. Okay, and I don't believe we have many answers at all. Okay, I believe anything that's not from God is from Satan. That's essentially what I believe. If it's not in a box, um, that's allowed by God, and it contradicts something God said, or it adds to the information God gave us, but it doesn't come from God, then I believe it's from Satan. Okay. Um, that's what I believe. There's a story with Adam and Eve um, in paradise, and God told Adam to simply not eat from the fruit of one tree. He could eat from fruit from any other tree, but this one particular tree, don't eat from it. And as the story goes, this particular tree is an arbitrary it was arbitrarily chosen. Okay, we don't exactly know, w- like God doesn't explain that this specific tree was, poisoned or something, like there's nothing specifically different about this tree than the other trees. That's the moral of the story, is that God gave an arbitrary rule that you should easily be able to follow. Okay, but Adam was tricked by the devil to eat from that tree. The devil convinced Adam that, the Christian tradition might say he convinced Eve, whatever the case may be, he convinced both Adam and Eve in some way, shape, or form that, hey, you should eat from that tree because that tree is going to give you some sort of power, okay, knowledge or power or whatever, okay. Um, so, um, but the tree itself, there's nothing special about it, okay. It was just a test by God. He was just testing to see if you're going to listen to God or if you're going to listen to anything else. Okay. The devil told him, in the Muslim tradition, he told him, "Hey, you can be immortal, or you're gonna be like an angel, whatever. Like you're gonna be super powerful, whatever." I think in the Christian or Jewish tradition, it's the tree of knowledge, maybe. Whatever the case may be, you're gonna get some extra powers. Okay, you're gonna get some godly powers. Okay, um, and that's how the devil um, seduces a human being into committing sin, is that he promises you some of God's powers. Okay. And we see that mysticism, at the end of the day, it's promising man some of God's powers. That's the allure of mysticism. It's saying that, hey, if you can connect with God, if you purify yourself enough, you're going to connect to the ultimate power. And so you're going to be on some levels at a higher level, closer to God's level spiritually. But then also you're going to be able to do a lot of things if you get there. You're going to start seeing things you can't see. You're going to start doing things you can't do, just like, Jesus Christ brought the dead back to life, right? So if you get to that level, you'll also be able to bring the dead back to life, because he was able to unlock those powers through his spirituality. Okay. And same with all miracles. All miracles were just those were highly chosen spiritual people that were able to unlock those powers. Now, if any of us could get to that level too. You just have to want to purify yourself to that level and then go through the steps, and you can get to that level. Okay. Now, in maybe some non-Abrahamic faiths, some cults that use this strategy, one of the things you have to do to purify yourself is let go of your attachments. Okay, so one of your attachments is your wife. Okay, so you should let the cult leader sleep with your wife just to prove that you've let go of this world, right? So me as the cult leader, I'm going to sleep with your wife, just to train you on how to let go of your attachments, right? So this is what the devil does. Okay, the devil's here to humiliate you and bring you into ruin. Okay. And he does a great job. He's actually well trained for this job. Okay. You won't hear mystics talk a lot about the devil. It's very interesting. They'll talk a lot about their level of soul and raising their soul, and they'll talk about connecting to God, who they say is everywhere in earth, inside earth, inside everything in earth, inside the air, the atmosphere. We can't understand God. He's everywhere, everything. Now, I do agree we can't understand God. Okay. But the idea that God is inside everything rather than above. Okay, so the Abrahamic faiths say God is above and he has the power to connect and manipulate and hear and see everything. That's how powerful he is. And he sends down blessings, right? That's the Abrahamic understanding. The mystic understanding is that God is everything around us. He's dark matter. Okay, he's the force, he's everything around us. So God's here with me and you right now. If we can't see him because we're stuck in the material world, we need to go into the spiritual world, and then we will be able to connect to God. And they say that's the purpose of this life, is to take our material body and our material experience and slowly go towards a spiritual experience. Okay. Another group that follows this mysticism is the Freemasons, okay, or the occults, okay, or maybe witches, okay. Like this is the type of belief system there, okay. Um, the Freemasons have lodges where they go and they share knowledge about how to raise themselves through these levels. Okay, that's why it's like 33 degrees of Freemasonry. Okay, and each of the rituals they do at each level, like people freak out online. They're like, oh, they're stabbing somebody, or those represent stories and things that you know that you do to let go of your ego. Okay, so they're letting go of their ego each step of the way. You know. Now, my main problem with this is that when they say this is found within Abrahamic religions, this is found within Islam. That's my main problem. Is that, hey, this is true to you. God knows if it's true or not. Okay, like I mean, I don't, I don't like to say what's true or not true because I'm not God. Okay, God knows. Okay, but what I can tell you is that in the Bible or in the Quran, there's no hint of this ideology in there. Okay, I can speak for the Quran. I've read the Quran. I've studied the Quran. I could tell you clearly that this ideology is not found in the Quran. Okay. Now, is there inferences that you could interpret? Yes. There are inferences in the Quran which you could interpret to mean mysticism. Yes. In fact, prayer is a mystic experience. Okay, prayer itself is a mystic experience. You're actually connecting to God. Okay. But what's the difference? The difference is God authorized that. Okay, so God authorized that we could connect to him through prayer. God taught us this. Okay. Um Giving to charity is another way that you could connect to God in some way. Okay, but in terms of a mystical experience, we believe prayer is actually you talking to God. Okay, it's you actually talking to God. Um, and so that's mystical. Okay, when Adam ate the fruit from the tree, we're told in the Quran that all of a sudden he felt shame and he had to cover himself up. He had to cover his privates. Okay, that's a mystical ideology. That's a mystical statement. Okay, the idea that you ate the apple, you felt shame. It's mystical. It means that sinning has some connection with shame. Okay, so somehow disobeying God leads to shame. So there is a mystical connection there. Okay, you could find mysticism in the Quran or in the Bible. You can, but does God clearly teach us it? Does God clearly say, "Hey, if you sin, you're going to feel shame"? No, He doesn't say that. We know Adam felt shame when he sinned. It could be the original sin. The first sin that ever happened made all Adam and the children of Adam all feel shame. And maybe God's giving us the origins of shame, but is God saying all sins are going to have a effect on your psyche? Is that what God's saying? God doesn't ever clearly say that. Okay, God never clearly says that. Quite the opposite. God says some people are going to sin and they're going to be allowed to sin their whole life and they're going to go to hell. Okay, some people say for some people God says that I'm going to give them blessings because they earned it. And for some people God says I'm going to give them blessings because I want them to continue to sin so that I can send them to hell. So the good person and the bad person are going to get blessings. Okay. Also, similarly, there's people who are good and God's going to keep them, without blessings so that they stay good and vice versa. So God says that he's going to give his blessings to every category of person for reasons that only he understands. So for someone to tell you, no, no, I know how to get blessings, you have to do this mantra and pray 10 hours a day. And then that way just be a burden on society. Okay. And then you're going to get God's blessings. No, it just doesn't work that way, in my opinion. And secondly, most importantly, that I can prove is that God does not teach us this. Okay. In fact, we have stories, biblical stories. If you look at every biblical story, okay, um, Noah, for example, um, he lost. I think he lost his son in the flood. His wife even go with him? I mean, I don't even know. Okay, but he lost his son. So if he's such a good person, so wise, he couldn't convince anybody. He couldn't even convince his son to believe in the message. Okay, and he ended up losing his son. And when he went to go pray for his son, God told him, "Don't pray for your son." Okay, because your son's one of the bad people. So we're supposed to believe that blessings and forgiveness and influence can come from us. If Noah was not able to reach that level, you want to reach that level. The point of the prophet stories is we use them as examples. Okay. There's nothing to indicate Noah had knowledge of the future. All we know is Noah had the message he was given. That's it. Okay. Another example, we can go through all the prophet stories, okay? And you can see that it just does not fit with a mystic's worldview. Okay. If you take every prophet story, it does not fit in the mystic worldview. Okay. Cain and Abel. You had Cain who killed his brother Abel, who was a good person. Abel was a great person, yet he was killed by his brother. He did nothing to deserve it. He was a very high spiritual level. He was the highest human spiritual level, maybe it was after Adam, right? He was a son of Adam, right? So he had no competition. He was the best human, basically, and he was killed for nothing he did wrong. Okay, very high spiritual level. Um, we can go down um, with all the biblical stories. Okay, let's look at the Pharaoh. He did so much bad for his whole life, and God kept giving him chances and chances and chances. Okay, so it's up to God. But this is my point: is that the Abrahamic religion is that God does what he wants when he wants. He has all the answers. We don't. Okay. A mystic will say, no, this life it follows a law. If you do X, like if you do one plus one, you're going to get two spiritually. But there's no patterns like that. There's no patterns like that. Okay. You have Lot and from Sodom and Gomorrah. He he lived in a city with a bunch of sinners, and he was going to be killed, and he didn't even know it. You know, now like there's no rhyme or reason. Like every prophet had different miracles, different knowledge, different things happen to them. Okay, we do, a lot of the prophets were just children of other prophets. Okay, we don't exactly have a system where God says in the scriptures that, hey, if you do this mantra and you say these words and you say it 1,000 times, you're going to unlock some magical power. There's nothing that says that. Or you're going to be closer to me. There's nothing that says that. The way you get closer to God is by following his recommendations of giving to charity, doing good, okay, taking care of the needy and the orphans, um, um, doing the rituals he did tell you to do, such as praying, maybe. Um, in Islam, you're recommended to go to Hajj. Um, you know, trying to forbid evil and promote good. You know, these are the type of things that you can do that will get you closer to God. Hopefully, okay. But like, if you're just gonna sit and pray all day in a monastery, you're not really helping anybody. Okay, you're not gonna be able to help anybody. Okay, you're really not gonna be able to produce the next generation of humans. You're not really participating in life. Okay, the way I see the Abrahamic faiths is that they are more about what you should not do. They're more about debunking religions than they are about creating a new one. Okay, the Abrahamic faiths mostly came to debunk religions rather than bring you a whole new long set of doctrines. Okay, um, they're here to tell humans not to believe in idol worship and a bunch of nonsense, sacrificing your children and so on and so forth. Okay. Believing the sun is God and, you know, um, all types of crazy behavior, drinking blood, um, maybe burning people alive to take their essence. There's a lot of weird things humans believe in and they do. And the Abrahamic faiths were here to debunk those things. The Abrahamic faiths are closer akin to, I would say, atheism than they are to modern day, you know, Abrahamic faiths or modern day faiths in general. Okay, because the message of Abraham was simply to not worship these statues, just worship God alone and to stop sacrificing your children. My understanding is like that was his message that he delivered. Okay, worship one God and don't sacrifice your children. And so instead, people they sacrificed goats at altars, and they did worship one God, but then they would start putting partners with God and raising other individuals, humans, um, to the level of partners with God or to the level of God, maybe. Um, and so we have to go through the process again, and we have to say, hey, you're just supposed to worship one God and don't do any weird rituals. So that's the way I see religion. Okay, and then also, don't do the few sins we're told not to do. It's not that many sins. um and you're supposed to do things recommended, and it's usually helping people, doing good and being good, and that sort of thing. Okay. um and Yeah, and when it comes to mysticism, I find it very dangerous because it it takes away the human experience and it replaces it with a spiritual experience that's not taught by God, it's taught by man. And a lot of times, what humanity has seen is that when you're going to be taught by a man or a teacher or a mentor or a guru, you end up becoming victimized by that guru. They end up taking your money, a lot of times taking your wives, a lot of times taking your kids. They brainwash you. Okay. They put you into a cult because in hopes of unlocking some sort of benefit to you that never happens. Okay. If there That's why these mystic religions and these they end up being occultish. They end up being hidden in secret. And the reason they end up being hidden in secret is because there's actually no doctrine there. There's actually no scripture there. Like there's no book. Okay, there's no Bible of Freemasons. Okay, there's a high Freemason that wrote a book, but there's no like Bible. There's no 10 commandments of being a Freemason. Okay, there's no 10 commandments of being a Sufi. Okay, same with every Hermetic religion. Okay, now you have like the Emerald Tablets. It's supposed to be some ancient hidden book that was rediscovered, and its origins are probably fabricated, but essentially, it does not. It's just gibberish in there. It's just gibberish. But if you ask somebody who believes in the Emerald Tablets, if you ask them, "Is this all? Is this your full Bible?" They'll say no. That's just one part of the worldview of mysticism, which does not have a Bible. You can't pin it down on any words. It's not making any specific assertion. You have to rely on human gurus, and if there's a human guru teaching you any of this stuff, they're making it up. Okay, they're inventing it, meaning they're lying. Okay. How do I know they're lying? Because I mean, unless they're claiming to be a prophet from God, then who do they get the information from? If they got it from a book, have them produce that book to you and read that book. But there's no book, there's no manual. Okay, they're making it up as they go along. Okay, and every mystic religion, they all follow the same patterns that I told you. It's all about the mantras. It's all about giving up material things. Okay, it's all about humiliating yourself and sacrificing things. Um, And everybody that goes down this path, I believe, regrets it sooner or later, and they go to ruin, and they become humiliated. And the longer you're down that path, the harder it is to pull away, because you would have to like admit to yourself that you wasted 10 years of your life learning about nonsense. Okay. And and Sufi, I would put Sufism in this category. Any religion, if you're part of any religion which you have somebody telling you this is how you raise your spiritual level, and and they don't have any, and you got to ask them, like, where did you get that from? Like, where'd you get that ideology from? Like, you're telling me to do this. Like, so they might tell you do 10 Hail Marys, okay? You should ask them, like, why 10? Who told you to tell me to do 10 Hail Marys? Like, did you get that from a book, or did you just make it up? Okay, because a lot of people are just making things up. And if you're just gonna follow this person, his recommendations based on his own brain, okay, I think that's very dangerous. And I think there's an argument to be made that you're worshiping that person. And if that person told you to go commit a sin, you're more likely to do it, because you trust them with your soul. Okay, so you're more likely to do it. Okay, and like, you'll see people that end up going down these paths. They will, like, become, like, closed off to the rest of society. They'll start, like, looking at other people as outsiders, like ignorant people, and then they're slowly become more isolated and alone and depressed and poor, and you know what I'm saying? And it just ends up deteriorating their entire life, having hope in a belief system that comes from, I would say, the devil. Okay, because it doesn't come from God. If it doesn't come from God, it must come from the devil. Okay. And you might think, well, what's wrong with doing mantras and just sitting in my room 1 hour a day and just repeating all these mantras? Like, what's wrong? And what I'm saying to you is, that's that's just the first step. That's called a humiliation ritual. Okay. um that's just getting their foot in the door. Okay, if I can get you to spend an hour of your day every day doing doing anything. Okay, I can get you to take 5 minutes doing something else. Okay, I can get you 5 minutes giving me $500. I can basically get you to do anything. If I can get you to spend an hour a day doing something, I can get you to do anything. Okay. And then your brain is going to have confirmation bias because you already invested time down that path. You're gonna like scan and look for things in your life that have changed for the positive, and then thank that 1 hour meditation for that. Okay. um and it's very dangerous. It's snake oil, but at least a snake oil salesman only takes money. Okay, these gurus, they do take money. Okay, but they're taking your soul too. Okay, and I think it's very dangerous, because what ends up happening is that it becomes a cult type thing, where where you know the person teaching you, in order to maybe keep the money coming, keep the respect coming, or whatever he gets coming, he might have to make up more things. He might have to invent crazier and crazier things. He might have to ask for more and more money, for example. He might start seeing some of you have doubts, like, this stuff, I've been doing this for 3 years, my life is worse, like, why am I doing this? Like, he starts seeing you have doubts, and then he'll say, well, is there any people in your life that's putting curses on you? Is there any people in your life that's putting a dark energy on you? Because you should get those people out of your life, because they could hinder your success. So that's how a con artist works. That's how the devil works. That's how he tricked Adam. Okay, so you got to watch out where you're getting your knowledge from. Okay, if you're going to be a Muslim or a Christian or whatever, you have to make sure that you know what your belief system is. I'm realizing a lot of people don't even know what their belief system actually is. Like, you need to read the source material. Okay, you need to read it for yourself with an impartial mind. Okay, and if it doesn't make sense to you, if you're not convinced with anything, okay, don't believe it. Okay, you should be convinced before you believe something. Okay, you got to use your brain. You got to read. It's a lot easier to read one book than it is to spend 10 years lost. Okay, so I think I'm going to end it there. If there's any questions about anything I said, just let me know.